So here we are for episode 7 of the Skinning to Go Cap series, and we have something a little bit different for you today in that I'm going to show you not one, not two, but 3 different locations that you can farm the same material. Now this is in case you decide that one of the zones isn't for you because of the pros and cons that each of these zones have. It is a genuinely viable option to have all 3 of these zones be your preference depending on the situation you find yourself in. So we're going to cover them all in the video today, so let's dive in. So the first thing to address is what is it we're farming, and today we are going to be looking at farming deep sea scales. Now these are a rare scale that you get from sea creatures from the Cataclysm expansion. Now because we're killing Cataclysm mobs to get these, you can of course, like we've discussed in many videos previously, use a potion of treasure finding, so that you will also get the tiny treasure chests when you're killing these mobs. Most of these locations that we're showing aren't going to have massive kill counts, but if the potions are relatively cheap and the materials you get from the treasure chests are expensive, it is definitely worth looking at. Now, location number 1 is going to be killing the frenzied thresher sharks that you find in the Twilight Highlands, up in the top right hand corner as you see it on the map. I'll put the map up here for you. And these sharks are fantastic. Basically, the reason I came here was it's the first location that popped to mind when I thought about these scales, and it's a really simple location. So there's an island just off the coast, and in order to farm these sharks, you're just going to do laps of the island. It's a nice convenient little circle and you just go around in circles. It is completely and utterly mind-numbingly tedious, but it's an excellent farm, and if you like your farm simple while you watch Netflix or something, this is definitely the one to go for. Now, one of the other big perks to this is that unlike the other farms, the mobs in question all float on the surface of the water, meaning if you have a druid to use flight form or the legendaries from Legion that turn you into a wisp, it's much easier to travel from one mob to the next than it is with some of the other farms. So if you find yourself in that position and the ease of travelling through the farm is something that you really appreciate, then this is going to be the farm for you. The negatives of this farm is that it is somewhat spaced out from mob to mob, but obviously this is mitigated by the fact that you can travel in your wisp form much more easily. It is also worth noting that you will be picking up some of these fish that are only useful really for cooking professions. A lot of them have high values but really low sale rates. If you can get them to sell, then it is an added perk to your intake, but they aren't really of value to very many, but they are there, so it is worth mentioning. And of course, as with all of these farms, you are going to be picking up savage leathers along the way, which are going to be fantastic for your steady gold farm aspect from these farms. Now location number 2 is going to be somewhat more popular, I imagine, due to one particular perk that it has over the other 2 farms, and that is accessibility. This is without a doubt, of any farm that I have covered on this channel, the easiest to get to. It is going to take place in Uldum, and you're going to be killing the still water slitherers. But the thing that really sets this apart from the others is the fact that the location is exactly where you land from the portal. So to get here, all you have to do is go to your capital city, be that Stormwind or Orgrimmar, go to your Cataclysm portals, take the portal to Uldum, and you literally land at the edge of the water that these are found in. Now, this perk is offset by the fact that the mobs are still very far between each other, just like they were at our previous location. But because of the layout of the water and the sporadic nature of the respawns, you can find yourself trying to make an optimal route to follow, but it doesn't always pan out. Sometimes you'll find yourself with mobs that have respawned but none near to you, and you find yourself having to travel a long way to get back to the ones that are next available to be killed. The water itself is in a somewhat of a U shape, so if you find yourself at one extreme end of the farm and nothing around, there's nothing for it but to simply travel to the next mob back down in the U shape. Now, this isn't too bad because the distances in question aren't massive, and if you have either some form of fast way of swimming or just simply pop up to the top of the water, go back into your flying form and head a few hundred yards back down, and you'll be able to get back to the mobs. But it certainly does slow you down by comparison to having mobs consistently spawning in front for you. Now our final location is going to be our first instance location, and that is Zagreb. Now Zagreb is located in northern Stranglethorn, and as a result is not as easy to get to as either of the other locations, which are basically just portal and fly. This is going to vary from faction to faction. If you are Alliance, then you are going to want to go to Stormwind and just fly down to the instance. If you are playing as Horde, then my personal preference of a way to get there is to take the Zeppelin to Stranglethorn from Orgrimmar, which is very convenient, but obviously you do have to wait for Zeppelins if you're not fortunate enough to get there just as it's leaving. Or alternatively, if you are a Druid, you can use your Dreamwalk and then travel to Duskwood and fly one zone south. So it's not exactly a long way out of the way, but it is more difficult to get to than the others. But the perks of this farm. So first off, Zagreb has a lot of mobs that you can farm, and they are in a convenient formation, basically just being in a big circle around the central water system. And in addition to this, there are 3 different types of mobs that you can kill and skin for these scales. You have the Lost Leviathan mobs, the Fish mobs, the Shardtooth Frenzy, I believe they are called, and also the Crocolisks that you will find on the embankments. Now, all of these mobs can be killed and skinned and provide these scales, and they also provide a great many zone drops which are sold for transmog. That obviously will vary in value and sale rates by server to server, but it is worth noting. Now, these mobs do go under the water, just like the ones in our second location in Uldum, but there are so many of them, and they are so close together that it does massively help mitigate the fact that you have to swim down in order to be able to skin them. There are an awful lot of mobs in the water here, which is the big selling point. But in addition to that, we also have the fact that in Zagreb there is also a very commonly run mount boss. There are 2 mounts that drop in this instance, so if you're coming here anyway to farm them, then obviously you can just do this on your way, or obviously vice versa. If you're coming here to do the skinning, there's nothing stopping you doing the mount farm as well, just clearing it out. Do bear in mind that obviously once you kill the bosses for the mounts, you will not be able to reset the instance if you decide you want to come back in. But in terms of the scales, there are so many mobs that give these scales in this instance. I tend to find that a single run will be able to stock me up for the amount of scales that I want to have on the auction house at any one time, so I wouldn't worry about farming massive numbers of these, as they are high value slow shifters. And as a result, you're not going to need to do more than the 1 lap. If you just clear this dungeon out in its entirety, you're going to have completed your mount runs, complete a nice healthy amount of transmog running, get yourself all the scales you could sell, and quite a lot of savage leather as well. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do let me know down below. If you do want to be kept up to date with any further videos in this series, then do consider subscribing to the channel, and as always, I hope to see you in the next one. Later.